from the question that was asked, IHE has done a profile on supply, which currently includes the supply ordering, where you order some supply, so non-patient specific supply items, and you can check the status of the order. And also you can track the shipment by saying your items have been shipped, or your items will be shipped, or your items have been received, or sorry, these items have been received, or you have been sent 10 items versus we have received 5 items. So those basic transactions are now in an IHE profile. They are pretty basic transactions, so there's some description of the functionality there. They're pretty basic profiling, because most of the richness is we brought it back to HL7. So if we could have IHE as a thin profile and most of the standards in HL7, so that IHE would not have to tweak a lot, that seemed better, and that's what we have. What we don't have now, and those are the two things that will change, is so we have the supply requesting, the supplier itself, so the delivery part, and the inventory. Inventory is how many do you have? I have 20, or since yesterday I used 2. So those are inventory transactions. They were not possible in FHIR R4, so we had to wait for R5. And at the time that we wrote this, R5 was not out, but now FHIR R5 is out, and that is the small change with a big impact that I was telling before. So before this is published, we will migrate. Most likely, IHE Pharmacy will migrate this to R5, so that in one implementation guide you have the basic guidance on how to request supplies, how do you notify the delivery of supplies and the reception of supplies, and how do you notify other parties of current inventory, or how do you query inventory, and how do you notify of usage or consumption reports that are important for inventory management. So long answer to a relatively short question. Justin, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. And wondering how, when you were advising on the inventory stuff, inventory query, inventory report, I assume you had said that you're kind of pushing most of the details on the FHIR side. So that's going to most likely, I guess the level of detail that you provide there is maybe customizable, meaning I could ask for a single generic drug. How much do you have of this? Or I could say, or find out lot numbers and expiration dates, and maybe even down to the bin location if the warehouses or the depot is okay with giving up that information. Is that true, or is it at that sort of product level?
Let me share what we can do there, and with the R5, which is why it's not there yet. I mean, it's not in the IHE stuff, but we can see it already in FHIR R5, and then you'll see if that answers the question. Does that work for you? Just a quick walk through that.
Yep, that's perfect.
So we have the two resources that are applied there is the inventory report and the inventory item. Inventory report is so this is metadata. So let me just start here. On this position, sorry, let me just zoom in a bit. On this location, so inventory location, which can be a shelf, can be a building, can be a city if you want. You have the following items on status pending repair or status ready to deliver, whatever. And then you have the date time that these were counted, and then you have the items. For the items, you have some sort of category just to group them. We have how many identical items we have. So if you have the inventory of acetaminophen 500 milligrams, then you'll get a lot of quantity, so big quantities. If you have the inventory of acetaminophen 500 milligrams with this lot number, of course, you'll have less. So it depends a bit on what is the granularity level of your item, for which we have the other resource. And for this one, we really need help to get it implemented. So for systems that are doing catalogs and supply chain, so supply catalogs and supply chain inventory management, there is this new resource, really a last-minute addition to FHIR, but we did not want to miss the opportunity. This is something that pretty much corresponds to the early discussions we had in IHE, where we have a generic description of a product, generic in the IT sense, so not in the medication sense of generic. We have a very flexible description of an item, which has the name, the organization, which has some description in different languages if we want, inventory status, so if it's in use, etc., discarded. We have base unit of count, net content inside the item, and then we have associated items, and then a bunch of characteristics for the item. So this is pretty much replicating what some supply and catalog and material management systems do. For example, the SAP MARA table, MRAA, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's the MARA table, MARC, I think, the materials table that they have there. So it's a generic table that you put attributes of the items, which can be strings, can be numbers, can be whatever. And then on the instance, you have specific attributes like identifier lot number. So if you want to have an inventory report, an inventory of items by serial number, then the items will be, each item will have its own serial number, which is called identifier for FHIR reasons. Don't ask why yet. So we can have these attributes to say these are the physical items that I want, or more generic characteristics of the item. You could just play with them. If the items are medications, then you can also resort to having catalog of medications or catalog of devices in a different way. But this is what we have. So does that answer the question somehow, Justin?
Yeah, that's perfect. And then the one other thing that is, well, for now, I was having trouble with, or we continue to have trouble with, is sort of the unit of measure conversion between the different stages of the stock. So when you purchase something, you're probably going to purchase in cases. When you're going to store it, if you're breaking that down and trying to dispense or not dispense, but to supply a pharmacy, you're going to maybe break it down into smaller units, or maybe recondition into like bottles and stuff like that. It's
we had that. So we had that discussion, and I think it was one of the last discussions we had on this in a relatively smaller group for modeling this. What we came up with, and I do not know if it's correct, but it has ended up as the proposed draft FHIR resource, is that for every item can be associated with other items, and that association has a quantity. For example, this box contains 3 blisters, and this blister contains 7 tablets, or this box contains 21 tablets. If each of those things, blister, the tablet, and the box, are an item, then you can actually do that. That is pretty generic way of doing it, but that should help. So if everything is an item, and if you say this item is associated with that, and the association can be contains, can be broken into, or can be used by, then you can pretty much do whatever you want there. So it's a generic key value pair with a quantity on top of it. Would that help in launching your things?
Yeah, and so that sort of fits in with like the GS1, like everything gets an identifier no matter what, where, how
it doesn't have. In this case, it doesn't have to have an official identifier. Just it can have a resource. It would have a resource. So you can and because resource in FHIR, they don't have to have their own GTIN. You can say this item is related to that item, and that other item doesn't even have to exist. You can just have it as a contained item inside the inventory item. So for example, the blisters, no one cares about blisters. You can say that the box is basically your trade item. If the hospital says the box contains 21 tablets, you just say, well, if there is a resource for tablets, for this tablet, then I can say that this box contains 21 tablets, but no one except me and the guy that is deblistering the medication, no one cares about the box containing 3 blisters. So I can put the blisters information only contained in the current resource that I have, because no one else, it doesn't have to be exchanged autonomously. It doesn't have to be part of any other information system. No one is going to count blisters, assuming that. So we can actually do that, and that resource would be pretty small. So the blister inventory item would be maybe would have a status. We don't have to put a category in it because it really lives inside of the parent resource. We can have a name or not. We don't have to have a description. We don't have to have an organization. We just have to say this blister contains, so since the box says here's the blisters that it contains, and then the blister can say this blister, by the way, contains 7 tablets. But that's it. That's what that should make your life simple. And the reason I said we need help is that this HL7 says we don't do supply. We don't want to do supply per se because other standards are there, sure, but inside the hospital we need to do something. And because of the product catalogs and because of the supply, and yeah, since a few years ago, people have realized that supply chain of medicinal products is not to be taken for granted anywhere. Until a few years ago, it was taken for granted by some countries. The fact that we pushed for this, there was a remark by HL7 saying this better have some traction on the field, or someone experimenting with it, because HL7 was a bit unsure, or we as a group in HL7 were a bit unsure whether this fits the thing. So if we have experimentation on this, I would love it, because that would justify that HL7 FHIR has this small part of the inventory and supply chain, or internal supply. So we really need to have some experimenting on this to validate if this thing makes sense at all.
It's sort of a chicken and egg problem. I've been waiting for this to, like, for HL7 or FHIR to, like, you know, understand that this is a pretty big use case before I get started working on integrations with HL7. But now that something exists,
now we can play with it. Yep.
We're going to be banging on. So thank you very much.
That's the idea, is that so the alternative was that we had to ask people for written letters, and so I don't know what. So that was a bit of a debate, and the point was, if we don't have anything to prototype in R5, then R5 will still be discussing this in the air, and then in R6 we will have maybe nothing, maybe something, but that's going to be too late. So let's get something out there. So now we have a resource. We can ignore everything except the status and add a bunch of extensions. If we do that, that's good feedback for HL7. But yeah, now we can play with it.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a travel through supply lane. Thank you for that. Any other topics? Anything that anyone wants to share, discuss? Any pain points? Anyone doing FHIR stuff?
I've got a
go ahead.
Discussion. So I'm curious about implementation guides and how they are dependencies on one another and stack together in some ways. So if you're doing a real use case, you may have a dependency on some kind of demographical oriented implementation guide maintained by a jurisdiction, right? Which has certain rules about what patient data you are looking for. It could be as simple as address formatting. It could also be what you simply cannot share or whatever. Yep. So you have like a demographical one, and then you have methodology ones like structured data capture or CPG, which are kind of meant to be just kind of go anywhere. You just kind of bring them in. But the next step is, okay, let's say you're in a disease or condition domain, and you want to, I wouldn't call it subclass, but you want a dependency on an existing one. Maybe it's maintained by WHO, maybe it's a special COVID one maintained by some institution, maybe it's maintained by a large donor like PEPFAR or the global malaria folks. What is the engineering of doing that? You can declare that. So let's say you start your fresh implementation guide. Great. You're going to pull in some jurisdictional stuff. You're going to pull in some methodology stuff. I don't know if those are called methodology things, but methodology stuff, maybe an IHU profile or two. And you're also going to implement your adaptation of this disease or condition domain. What's the best practice to do that right now? Is it that you bring it in and then you overwrite the value sets if you need them to be overwritten, or you overwrite the profile of resources that if you want? I've never actually gone through the adaptation process, and I want to try to understand it better. And I hope I've explained that without talking too much.
No, explaining things with talking too much, that's my field. I can only speak for what I consider pretty basic, which is each implementation guide can depend on one or more other implementation guides. So indeed, we can make an implementation guide that depends on SDC and national terminology and national profiles and an IHE profile. We can do that. What I don't know if we can do or how it could be done is, can I make one profile that, because one profile only has one parent, so, but can I have one profile that gets the national and the SDC or the HL7 constraints at the same time? I can declare one thing to be, so the tooling does allow us to say, here's an instance, and this is conforming to both profiles. That is easy, and the validator will even check that. But how can I declare? I'm thinking in sushi terms. How can you declare one thing? So we cannot declare one thing to have two parents because each structure definition only has one base. But I don't know if you have anything else that can say this. By the way, I want to add this base and this base as entry points to my national. So my national patient profile would be the one with the whatever terminology, and the one with the IHE constraints, and the one with. I don't know if that can be done. I can check.
Okay, let's do another one though. Let's do another approach. The other approach is you're going to override. So let's say your CPG packages all rely on a value set called gender. Okay. Yep. And you want to override that value set. You don't want to change all the CPG stuff. You don't want to build your own stuff. You want to use it, and you know that they rely on gender in that CPG stuff. So all your clinical decision support, all your measures, whatever, that's all relying on the gender. And let's say that you want to override, but you don't want to change the stuff. So you want to override the value set. Now you can make a value set composed of a value set, right? I believe in FHIR, right?
Yep.
But can you override profiled resources or value sets?
You can create a child, so you can create another profile that is the child of your original profile. And there, if your parent profile allows you to change the value set, then you can say, you know what, the other guy said this is the value set A for this element. Never mind that. We are not going to do this. We are going to do the value set B for the same element. You can do that if that's allowed on a higher level. But for example, the patient gender, that's not allowed. It's a required binding. So you can do, let me just do some sushi. Where is this?
Okay. Thanks.
Let me just open. So, just do something quickly here. Oh, sorry, no, this is the folder. No, I don't have to run new folder. Sorry. This, and then sushi. It's in it. Yeah. So sample ID. This is inherit canonical status version. That's it. That's it. I don't care about all these things. G project. Okay, I'll just use example IG. Okay. Oh, I have opened this folder. There. Sorry, just for the quick setup. Now I can do this, and I can do some sushi there. Actually, there's already something there. So profile patient. I can do profile patient. Now, if I go to patient on the, sorry, my browser window is there. Richard, tell me if what I'm doing is not what you want to address.
No, this is great. I've actually never gone through Sushi Init. I'm always Git cloning things that already exist. So it's nice to see a full example from scratch. So
I just created a basic nothing implementation guide automatically with the Sushi Init. Normally I clone the repository, but this was it's easier now. And I'm looking at the patient. So the resource patient is a profile itself on something else, on a domain resource. But this is what I have. So I cannot change the gender because gender is a required binding, but I'll try it anyway. So let's see, I want patient profile. Let me just push this down. I don't need this now. So my patient, and then name is mandatory, okay. And then I can say gender from, and I don't have a value set. So let me see how I declare a value set. So for those of you that know it by heart, I don't. The easiest thing is to go to Fish School and see the examples there, creating a value set. And you can also look at the sushi specification or any other examples. Include value set, no. Is this? Okay, I can use this one. I can just use this one template. So this is SNOMED. I don't need SNOMED. So this is value. So gender set, and then description. So this is doesn't mind any of this, doesn't really matter if it's okay with you. And what we can do is include. Now, I forgot to declare this. I need to declare the code system. Sorry, local code system. I'll just do this. Check, okay, code system. This is genders system. Title is, sorry, typing as fast as I can here. And then this is nothing. I don't need this. I just need the gender. So tell me which genders would you want to use in a hypothetical substitution. Richard?
Oh, don't get me in trouble. Why don't we call
it? We'll all get in trouble because this won't work.
Male sex at birth. Female sex at birth. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's good. Female sex, no, female at birth. Just making something up here.
Sure.
Male at birth. And then you still want the other ones, right? Male at, and you still want the normal value set that HL7 has. And I say normal in the sense of being politically correct here and actually scientifically correct. Normal in the sense of the standardized ones that HL7 has standardized, because this will break.
You're fine. You're fine. You're doing fine.
This will break. I'm just saying this will break because
I shouldn't have said gender, but we'll just
go
with it. Okay.
Right. I use this example a lot because HL7 doesn't allow this to be changed. So we cannot say this. We cannot use gender identity here. So if I have a gender code system, actually I can do this. So then I don't include. Let me check the syntax again. This is include codes from system. Okay. Codes from system, and this is genders. Yes. So if I do this, when I do this, then my value set here, the gender set, will include these two codes. But what I want to do is also to include the other ones that exist already in HL7. So I can do this. Let's say that your intent is to change this. So patient administrative gender, and then you have the URL here, so you can actually do this. So this adds, normally I would do this the other way around, include the codes from the standardized, normalized administrative gender in HL7, and include the ones that I want for my country, whatever.
That's
whatever
perfect. Okay, that's a great example.
So if I do this, so if I do this now, I can say gender is from gender set. Something is going to break here, and I don't know what it is. Let's see. So name, and this is the this is gender equals. Oops, this male. Let's say this would work. So let me just go and run my thing. This is building. Give me a few seconds. Should be relatively quick to build this one. Really tiny IG, and it breaks. So where does it break? Did I do something wrong, or is it breaking as expected? There's the error. I don't see the error. Sushi info. I see warnings. Let me just run sushi. One error. Okay. Oh, because I'm silly, I just typed this. It's too good to work at first. So
I think the ID is genders dash
sorry.
CS.
No, is this no, is that it was indented under name, so the name.gender does not exist, of course. That was just a silly mistake from me. For those of you who work with YAML, you've been there. So sushi doesn't complain, but something will, I'm guessing. I'm sure. Let's see how sure I should be. So I'm now building the whole IG. So sushi-wise, this passes, and it even creates an example of male at birth and has the code system and the value set. So let's see what the publisher will say about this. Just building it locally, it's much faster.
Can I ask a more high-level question? This feels like Swagger docs for integrations. Is that kind of what I've never seen fish or sushi, so this is the first time I've seen this. But doing implementation guides, is that essentially like, hey, I've got this integration, this is how you work with me? Or is I always thought that you were doing this at sort of a higher level, saying this is sort of the standard for how it should work everywhere, whereas this looks like it's, hey, I've got this system and this is how you should talk to me.
Well, there is, so I think there's kind of what you said is in there. Sushi is just a shorthand. It's just a language for typing these things faster. The content of the IG. I will actually refer you, Justin, if you don't mind, to there is we made a FHIR profiling webinar and a FHIR implementation guide webinar. So
cool. I'll take a look. Thank you.
I'll just put it on the chat here because.
Oh yeah, FSH is awesome. It makes things so much easier. And if you look at the sushi config, it did fail. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. See, it's the build fails. So yeah, if you can do these things, and this will be so much easier to write down the specifications. So let me see. I know male at birth. Okay. So this means that this gender cannot exist. Let me take this off and then rebuild to see what it does. Might still fail because this actually should not be. So this line should not be allowed. I mean, not this one, but this one, because this one depends on that one. Yeah, so the step that I'm going here is just quickly implement something technically. But one of those implementation guides, the one that talks about food allergy, talks a bit about the process. So how you run through the process. You define your data models first. From your data models, you actually have so on an abstract sense, like we did in IG, we have our data needs, we make a data structure. Now we map it to FHIR, and then we add the value sets that we need. So all of these things that I'm doing here, they are assuming that you already have in your mind or in a document the data models and the data needs. But yeah, that I would point you to that process because it's really important, in my opinion, not jump immediately to let me implement something technically, but more like, let me start by following the steps because I know someone has to maintain it in the future. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. I guess my confusion was just around who the authors should be of these implementation guides, and that's still like
very interesting discussion. We actually have. Are you going to be in Malawi, Justin? In the FHIR discussions?
No, that's in May, right? No.
Yeah. So there is, but we will we'll surely discuss that soon because we are actually setting up some background or some not, I wouldn't say advice, some tips on how to handle this. In my view, you need to have functional experts collaborating with technical authors, and the technical author is the guy that types what I just typed, as per the request of the functional experts that say, no, patient gender is one thing, patient gender identity is another thing. So here, for example,
you have can you click on the QA report actually? But yeah, also I just want to highlight that Rukshan has a question as a hand up. So I want to make sure everyone gets a voice.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. To answer what we are doing at, so we are in Sri Lanka, we are at the initial phase of developing the FHIR implementation guides and the FHIR profiles and basically the FHIR standards. So what we have done is, to answer Justin, what we have done is we have a FHIR implementation working group, so which consists of health informaticians, medical practitioners, and administrators, and the technical people. So we get together and we identify some use cases. So at the initial phase, we are trying to connect two systems, OpenMRS and a locally running EMR system through FHIR. So we identify one use case where we have to sync the patient data between the two systems. So we identified the data elements and we developed the value sets together with, for example, to come into a decision what identity we should use, whether to go for a personal health number or the national identity card number or passport number, so all of the above. So we get together, we have a technical discussion, and we come to a consensus on what to include. And we develop the implementation guides through Sushi, and then we publish. So it's kind of like a multidisciplinary approach. So we are getting together and going by use case at the moment. And another thing, so to answer Justin, these implementation guides can be developed by anyone, so even an individual level. So what we consider right now for as a best practice is in Sri Lanka, so we will publish, the Ministry of Health will publish the initial implementation guides and profiles, so defined for the country. So the institutions, for example, a hospital can use our profile as their base profile, and then they can add more constraints or add bind their own value sets, do things like that, but without violating the base profile that is published by the Ministry of Health. So that is what we have done at the moment.
Correct. So I used these slides before. So you have FHIR base, and you can have standard constraints like a pyramid building on top of this, and you can have your national guidance, and then everyone can do their own things. But if I want to be conformant with the national guidance, then I have to be, most likely I will depend on it to not deviate from it. So,
got it. Thanks. And that national guidance is like your concept dictionary, the definitions in OpenMRS that define like what pregnancy is or what,
For example, if a country says, no, we don't have gender, we only use gender identity here, they can do that. And for them, it's very simple. Then in my view, and that's the question I have for Rukshan, in my view, they should consolidate and, document that decision. It's sacred. It's not a technical debate. And then you have the technical people, the technical authors saying, okay, then we will see if this is an extension, if it's adding the value set or whatever it is that we can do there. But that's my idea is that, and my question, Rukshan, are you doing that split, or when you say we do the then we do the implementation guide, so we have an agreement and then we do implementation guides, do you document the agreement somehow and say this is our data models, our data needs, or you document your data needs in the form of FHIR profiles or anything in between?
No, actually we document our decisions, so why we came to them, and before we come to those decisions, we consult with our technical working group members, as well as policymakers, as well as the laws and policies in the country. So we come to this consensus after consulting with all of them, and we document our findings. And according to the finding, if there are existing value sets, we will use them, or we'll tend to create, if we have to create something, we create the value sets and we define their meaning. So basically, we form a data dictionary, and we document everything, and then we publish that through the implementation guideline.
Perfect. How does your data dictionary look like? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it some tooling for managing terminologies? How does it look like?
Actually, we had just started creating the data dictionary. So currently we are using a spreadsheet format. So what we have done is, for example, the WHO publishes some of their data dictionaries when it comes to, for example, if you search the smart guidelines, yes, there are data dictionaries. So we tend to, currently our dictionary is to use that format, that spreadsheet format as our format, and build our data dictionary on top of that.
Yep, perfect. I mean, I would hope to move on when we have better supporting tooling from spreadsheet for everyone. But yeah, the problem with the spreadsheet is just that it's, on one hand, it's too flexible. The other side, it's if you make your own clone of your spreadsheet, then it's your own clone. It has nothing to do anymore with the original one. So you don't know. It's hard to keep links and traces between the changes that you've done or the changes that WHO has done. But yeah, the idea of having a national data dictionary is really something that I think is really, really important. So thanks for that.
So when it comes to our research, what we found is like, for example, Australia, they publish their data dictionary as a PDF. And in United Kingdom, the NHS, they have the data dictionaries in a website. So I don't think there's a consensus among the countries and institutions how to publish data dictionary. So
correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Currently we went for the spreadsheet one because
that's good.
Published by the WHO. Yes.
I think that's the best we can have now. There are a couple of pilots, a couple of things happening there, but there's nothing that is really, in my view. So either we can say we go for a tool like OCL that contains all the concepts that we need, one thing, or we go for actual implementation on a system, or we go for other types of systems for managing data dictionaries, or we use spreadsheets for creating the content. And at this moment, the reality is that most people are using spreadsheets for creating the content and to manage the content itself.
Has anyone used FSH as the data dictionary? Essentially as the L2 data dictionary?
FSH is a tool just to enter data. So I don't know how that could be used, but we can use FSH logic. So we can use logical models in fish format, in FSH format, which is actually, I think, what we did. Let me just see if I can find it. Food allergy. It should be.
Well, the thing about FSH is that it's a lot easier to version control compared to something like JSON definitions.
Right. But
and you can define code systems and value sets all day long in FSH. Right,
but it's still source for something, right? So what you have, and let me just show you this. Where is it? Let me just see if I find it.
Well, spreadsheets still have to be converted too, right? So
right. So yeah, right. So okay, so you're saying spreadsheet versus FSH. So this is
I'm just being contrarian and having fun, and you're really smart. So I'm interested in the thoughts about it.
No, just yeah. So I'm just picking that up and saying, oh, FSH as a language, you can do this in FSH. So if you do this in FSH, then you have a standard structure for defining a data structure, which is pretty much of the content of a data dictionary, I think. So this is
and the logical model can take value sets directly.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. So you can actually go here, and so I don't think I can do it because I'm not in edit mode. I can go to edit mode here. Then I could actually do this. Is it here's no the halogen, and I can do.
So even though our data dictionary is based on Excel, that doesn't mean we are keeping it as an Excel. So we will initially, after after creating the data dictionary to Excel, we will convert it to use something like FSH and convert it into a value set and serve it through a terminology server.
Okay, that's a long path, yes, but that is something that could be done. So you would convert it as FSH, or you could convert it so from spreadsheets. I mean, if I had to author a lot of content, I would author it in the spreadsheet, just so much more convenient. Then you can say, okay, but the official source for this, well, for minor changes and for version control would no longer be a spreadsheet, but this kind of things, I think. So for example, if now I go and change this for Allegiance VS, so like this will be the value set. I am not going to commit it because I do not know the name of the value set, but this actually should work. And then in my logical data model, it would show that the Allegiance now follows this value set. So if you do that, then you have logical models published as FHIR logical models, JSONs or XMLs or whatever. So structured representation of the data dictionary, that's the key thing. And then once you have a structured representation of a data dictionary, you can do pretty much what you want. You can do, let me just show you what I did. This is actually mostly, I don't know which one it is. I have to go to my history link, sorry. Not this one. This one. And
I was wondering how plant UML fits into this. Can you just take the fish structure and turn it into a plant UML?
I can do one better.
You asked the plant UML enthusiast.
I love this. When he showed it to me a couple of years ago, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to spend so much time doing
this thing. No, actually, I'm very sad that it's not working. I will try it again to see if it's working, but it's not working. But I have something that I've been, just keeping busy with and keeping ChatGPT busy with as well. So this is actually so you can do this. If you have the structured definitions, you can do, okay, this is one, this is another, this is another. You can actually do some more fancy stuff. But something that I'm having some fun with is this. So the key point, and as we're approaching the end of the hour, key point is once you have this information structure, even if it's spreadsheet, then you can do something with it. You can do so. A spreadsheet is not good for version control, etc. Fish is just the entry language, and then you can do the structured logical data models on FHIR. But once you do that, you can have some fun. Like where is it? Where did I have my logical data models? I'll just open it again. No, sorry, it was here. Thought it was here. So just have to find the right window where I had this. This one. Currently, it's still half baked and it's actually broke before being completely baked. But what I have, I'll try it. I just made this that creates the plant. Okay, it doesn't work. That creates this plant UML, not this, just one box of plant UML from this JSON file. So because at some point, so this is not a good representation. So if you have this, that's very fine, but it's still buried in a FHIR implementation guide. If I want to take this into a presentation or whatever, or if I want to do something else with it, I was thinking, can we do this on plant UML? And we can. So I have this, I just started working on something really simple and silly because plant UML is open. Specifications are all out there. So what I just did is make me a thing that transforms this, and it does transform quite well when it works. When it did work, the things that you've seen there into this. It's just a simple transformation. So that's it. So once you have the key point being, besides of the technical toys, once you have your data dictionary in a structured language, in a structured manner, you can pretty much do what you want with it. You can version it. You can define some governance around it to say who is going to maintain which, where is this being reused? Where is this being linked to? It's because if I have my patient model changed, then I need to change my prescription model as well, or maybe not. So you can do lots of things like rendering it in a different way, checking the impact, doing version control, etc. And that I really like seeing when the initiatives that are in that direction.
Very cool. I had one question about the layered, sort of the FHIR specification, and then on top of that would be, yeah. So there's a implication in the diagram that it's sort of narrowing the scope or the constraints and stuff. Is that true, or is it going in both directions? So you can't loosen as you go up and say, hey, sorry, go ahead.
The correct thing, so the correct statement is that if you are profiling something, you can only be narrower than that something you're profiling. But on an implementation guide level, you can actually have a profile that is, so on your project, you can have something that is a national patient dependent. So you can have my project patient is dependent on the national patient. That has to be narrow, but you can also say my implementation guide also does a new device profile. And the device profile, you can choose your device profile not to have a national parent, but to have the FHIR parent. So or to have any other layer. So that's for me the tricky question from what Richard was asking. How does it work? That's the problem that I haven't figured out how to use. So you can do this. You can say this implementation guide depends on these 4 implementation guides. And for profile patient, I'll depend, my patient profile is going to be narrower than profile number 1. My device profile is going to be narrower than profile number 3. And my prescription profile is going to be narrower than profile number 2 that I'm inheriting from the other implementation guides. That you can do all that. How can you say, no, this has to be the same or narrower than the patient and the IHE patient and the national patient? Then that's something that I don't know how to do. But technically, each artifact can only be narrower than the parent artifact. Each implementation guide can have one or several dependencies. Therefore, as long as they are all depending, not breaking the FHIR-based specification, then it's fine. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so when it will be good to see some. So for example, Justin, if you want to start playing with this, okay, you may make a product catalog or inventory management system. You can use the IHE profile, which is pretty much just when it comes out, which is pretty much a very thin profiling layer on the base, which is HL7. So HL7 is pretty narrow, pretty broad, so that's fine. Oh, and the other thing, just because it's narrower, it doesn't mean that it contains less data. It's narrow. It means that it contains less data. And for the other things, we add extensions, and that is because, let me just show you. Types.html. This should work. Nope. Just showing this very quickly.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. The extensions are sort of a broadening of the specification, but then you're kind of you've screwed with the architecture because nobody else is really, unless you can standardize that.
Yeah, the extensions, they are pretty much designed to be standardization, but as you see, everything can be extended. So technically, when we are extending, we are not extending. We are just defining specific narrower instances of extension, because every element says you can do any extensions you want. What we are saying is that among all the things that you want, here's one that is predefined and prepackaged for you. And then the upper layer can use that extension and say, oh, I'm not going to recreate my extension. I'm just going to reuse the lower extension, the lower level extension. So technically, functionally it is extension, but technically it is just another type of constraint, which is in FHIR, you can extend everything and everything is valid, but those extensions have to be defined in a dependency layer. As you play with it, it will become more confusing, I'm sure. It did for me.
So, correct if I'm wrong. So I think if Justin wants to use the base, so like for example, where Justin is from, they have a national profile. But if Justin wants to use the base profile for his institution, he can use it. Technically, he can. But since the national profile has more constraints, then the interoperability will be lost in that case. Correct. Because there will be some conflicts.
Correct. And how you can solve that? Basically, two things you need to be aware of in practice. One is you can tell your national servers to only accept resources that are conformant to the national thing. So you can say by decree or by law or by whatever, you can say that the systems must, so any implemented system must check that the incoming messages are conformant to the national rules. So you can say you can do whatever you want in your IG, but every resource that comes in, we will check if it's compliant with the base. So don't worry, you can mess up. We will be there to let you know. The other thing that you can do is to set up some validation procedure to say, again, before you even do this in a production or in a test environment, come to us because we will test it, or give us some data, or join one test event. And in that test event, we will see that we will check if your specifications are compatible with our specifications. And the good thing about FHIR is that you don't have to run an actual test. You can say, this is specification number 1, specification number 2, check if they are compatible, and the validator tool actually should do it. And I think it does do it automatically for you. It says, nope, this one says this is mandatory, and this one says the same element is forbidden, so they are not compatible. So you can do lots of pre-validation with the tooling of FHIR. But in fact, yeah, every implementation, so this project can say, I don't like the national guidance, I'll just make my own version of patient. Fine. You just have to have the other mechanisms to say you'll do it, but to get the certification or to get the, to get part of the community or whatever, you have to, you cannot do that, or you have to avoid that, or you have to be conformant with the national guidance.
Yeah, the main reason to do that is you're based on a standard version that doesn't provide something that you want, but you have had discussions and it will be implemented in 3.0 or something like that. And so you do it as an extension until it becomes part of the standard. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, you really wouldn't want to do that.
No, so to demystify it, that sometimes there are extensions that because of your scope, they will be necessary. So some of them will be, we need this, and FHIR doesn't have it yet. Okay, we try to take care of those. But it takes a while, so you need to use extensions. But some extensions you say, you know what, in this country you have gender identity is, so gender, we don't care, but gender identity is mandatory. Okay, then you put gender identity, and it is an extension. Or you say that, I don't know, you have eye color. Well, actually, eye color is already a standard extension, I think. Whatever, you do whatever, or you're doing a specific study and a specific community has something and they want to extend something, and they say, this is never going to make it to the FHIR core because it's so specific for us. Let's just make an extension and nationally agree on that extension. There's lots of those national extensions that are being published because it's a convention like any other. We should not exaggerate. And as I've seen in a profile recently, if you notice that something has only extensions or lots of extensions, you'll see it. It doesn't pass the smell test. This is not really, or something is wrong here, or something might be wrong here, or maybe FHIR missed the point. But normally, if you see lots of extensions, you should think, are we doing the right thing? Or it just happens, and sorry, just one more second. What happens is that you start with one extension, and then you, okay, we just have another, and by the time you do this, you say, you know what, this is no longer a medication resource. We should use the device resource or the inventory item, whatever, because we have extended it so much that what we wanted is actually the other thing, and we didn't think of that up front. So that's something that can also happen. So experiment at will, but keep them in check, the extensions.
Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Jose. I have to drop for another call. Thank you, Justin and Rukshan and others who offered insight and questions. This is a great session for me, at least. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And if there's no other points, I wish you a good day and talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.